Hello and welcome back to my channel and to Table for One, my YouTube cooking show where I share delicious single-serve recipes for anybody who wants quick and easy meals. This week I want to share with you 3 of my favourite one-pot pasta and noodle dishes. We love a one-pot pasta over here because they are super quick, super easy, unbelievably delicious. So I'm going to tell you about 2 of my favourites and then I'm going to show you a recipe for the 3rd. Before we get started, make sure you are following along so that you don't miss any videos. I share a new recipe every other week with a couple of other fun things thrown here and there. This week we are making a spicy vodka gochujang noodles. So you are probably aware of pasta alla vodka, which was probably made famous by Gigi Hadid, but this is a slightly different version. So a traditional pasta alla vodka has a creamy tomato sauce and it uses vodka in the sauce to help enrich the flavour. So the alcohol kind of carries some of the tomato flavour, but it also helps bind the acid and the fat, so the acid coming from the tomatoes and the fat coming from the cream. It helps bind and emulsify those to create a rich and creamy sauce. So I have taken inspiration from that, but whereas a pasta alla vodka normally uses some chili to make it a spicy pasta, what I have decided to do is substitute the pasta for noodles, and instead of fresh chili or chili flakes, I am using gochujang. Gochujang is a hot fermented chili paste from Korea. It looks kind of similar to tomato puree, but is slightly darker, and the flavour is obviously spicy as it's fermented chili, so that's kind of the main ingredient. It's really got quite a kick, but it also has this kind of depth and umami-ness from the fact that it's fermented. It also gives it a slight tang, and it has a bit of sweetness. So when we're thinking about the kind of flavour profiles of cooking, this hits quite a few. It's got heat, but it's also got acidity and sweetness and umami. So ingredients like this just really pack a punch when it comes to cooking. Those are the sorts of things that we want to be using, particularly when we're cooking for one, because you don't want a fridge and a cupboard filled with hundreds and thousands of jars and bottles. And if you are looking for kind of key ingredients in your cupboard and in your fridge, you're going to be able to get maximum use out of and maximum flavour, then things like gochujang are really good. We are using this as the heat and the spice in our noodles. We're also going to add a couple of chili flakes because if we're going to make a spicy noodle, we're going to make a spicy noodle. Do you know what I mean? That is a brief summary of the dish. In order to get started, we want to chop up half an onion and 2 cloves of garlic. It should be a white onion, but I thought I had one and I don't. So I'm going to use a red onion, guys. Sue me. You just want to finely chop this because we're going to saute it in a bit of butter to get started. And what we want is for this to really kind of melt down into the sauce. You don't want a lumpy sauce. You want a smooth and creamy sauce. Remind me to sharpen my knives after this video. Do the same with our garlic. Oh, the onion's getting me. I despise chopping garlic. It's one of my least favourite jobs in the kitchen. If I could never cook with garlic again, honestly, I might do it. Right, would you believe it? That is all the prep, all the chopping that we have to do in this recipe, which is one of the reasons that I love it so much. You want to grab a pan. I like to use a fairly big one for a recipe like this, even though it's only one portion, just because when we're cooking the noodles, it helps. It means they have a bit more space to kind of move around. What am I adding? Butter. So we are frying this in butter rather than olive oil, just because I want the buttery flavour. I think it works really well with the kind of vodka and the creamy sauce. I just think the butter is delicious. Butter burns much quicker than oil does. So you can add a tiny bit of oil just to kind of slow down the browning process, which is what I'm gonna do. Just literally a drizzle like that. And then we're gonna add in the onion and the garlic. Saute that down on a kind of medium heat because we don't want this too high. We don't want the onion and the garlic to get too brown. We want them to soften and turn translucent and slightly golden without getting a really deep colour. Mainly so that you don't see them in the sauce. If they were darker in colour, then you would get lots of flecks of brown, which is fine. This is just going to look better. I think that the visual appearance of a dish is important in the taste of it as well. So that's going to go on the heat with just a pinch of salt, which will draw out some of the moisture from the onion and stop everything from burning. Okay, so the onions and the garlic have softened and are starting to brown, but they're not colouring loads. So at this point, we are going to add in our tomato puree and our gochujang. And then importantly, they get fried off for a good couple minutes. This really deepens the flavour of both of them. If you just added the tomato puree in now and didn't let it cook off, it would kind of retain its acidity and it wouldn't have the same deep, rich flavour as if you do what I'm about to do, which is cook it off. And then I'm going to add in the gochujang. You can kind of tailor this to how spicy you want it to be. I want a little bit of heat in there, so I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of each. And they just work so well together. So this is gonna go back on the heat. Don't worry if it starts to kind of stick to the bottom of the pan. That's all flavour. It's actually called fond, which is the chefy word for it. What we're gonna do after is deglaze the pan with the vodka, which is gonna pick up any bits of flavour that get stuck to the bottom of the pan. So don't panic, it's all good flavour and it will all come together in the sauce. Okay, so this is done and you can really see how much it's changed in colour, even just from a couple of minutes on the hob. It's really deep red now and you can see the sugars in the tomato and the gochujang are just starting to caramelise, which is absolutely what we wanted. The oil also starts to separate a bit from the tomato, which is what happens if you're making a curry. You want to fry off the curry paste or the spices until the oil separates. And you can see kind of little bubbles of oil in amongst everything. That's how you know it's separated and that's how you know it's cooked for long enough. And the same thing kind of happens with this tomato puree and gochujang mix. Next, in with the vodka. If you don't drink alcohol or you don't want to include alcohol, you can just leave this out and change nothing else about the recipe. It's absolutely fine. So we're going to add it in. Gorgeous. Back on the heat until essentially it looks like the vodka has completely evaporated. Okay, as you can see, this sauce is reduced. The liquid has gone, which means it's the perfect time to add the noodles and the water. So I'm using these lovely, wide, flat, dry noodles, mainly because they are so fun to eat. They're really long. You could use any noodle type really, and you could use a kind of straight to wok noodle, but you'll just want to use less water and you want the cooking time to be much less as well. Whereas these are dry, so these are going to take a little bit more liquid and a little bit more time. So I'm going to add in about 200 millilitres of water to start with. What you want to be conscious of here is the noodle type and the size and shape of your pan. So I'm using a slightly bigger pan, which means there's more surface area for the water to evaporate. If you were using a smaller, deeper pan, then it might not evaporate as quickly, so you might need slightly less water. As with most elements of cooking, you can always add more, but you can't take away. So start with a bit of water, keep your eye on it. You're going to need to keep stirring it anyway, because as the noodles soften, you want to stir them to make sure they cook evenly. And if it looks like it's drying out before the noodles are cooked, then add a splash more water. We're also going to add in the frozen corn at this stage. So I'm using 75 grams of frozen corn, which is the same as half a cup. I'm going to add this in so that it cooks and defrosts as the noodles cook. They take about the same amount of time. This will also add a little bit of liquid as well. While the noodles cook, I'm going to tell you about two of my other favourite one-pot pasta dishes. So first up is my creamy chicken and chorizo orzo. This is such a comforting dish. It uses chicken thighs and chorizo to add lots of flavour. So they're both slightly fattier cuts of meat, and chorizo also has lots of spices in it, so it imparts so much flavour into the pasta. It also has onion, bell pepper and some smoked paprika. You can think of this pasta as the equivalent of a paella. So it has similar flavours, and because we're using Orzo, it ends up having a not dissimilar texture, although this one has a much creamier sauce. So paella is slightly drier, whereas this is super creamy. So the flavors of this are similar, the vibe of it is similar. It's a really, really delicious dish, and because we're using the Orzo and it's cooked in the sauce, it gets really, really silky, almost reminiscent of a risotto because all the starches are released as the Orzo cooks. It's so flavorful, and I think you should try it this autumn, winter. And the second one-pot pasta dish I want to tell you about is my toasted corn and coconut mac and cheese. It has some similar elements of a traditional mac and cheese in that it has a really cheesy, really creamy sauce, but it's kind of elevated slightly because we're using toasted corn, which adds a nutty, sweet flavor. So you cook the corn in a dry pan and that really, really brings out the nuttiness. We're also using, to complement that, coconut milk rather than normal milk. In a traditional mac and cheese, you'd often just use normal milk, but we're using coconut milk to bring a slightly nuttier flavor and to complement the corn. 2 different types of cheese to add the right flavor and texture combination. And then everything is actually finished off with coriander and green chili to add a little bit of vibrancy and a little bit of spice. It's just a slightly different feeling to your regular mac and cheese. I love the combination of corn and coconut together, and I think it works well in so many dishes. But if you're a big mac and cheese fan like I am, then I would definitely recommend you give this one a go. You can find both recipes on my Instagram and on my website, eleanorgwilkinson.com. And if you like the sound of my one pot, one portion recipes, then make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, which is my newsletter, so that you don't miss any recipes. I also provide exclusive recipes for paid subscribers and weekly meal plans for anybody who wants to eat delicious, varied dinners but doesn't quite have the mental space or the time in their week to plan it for themselves. Don't worry, I've got you. I choose 5 different one pot, one portion meals that have similar ingredients. I write the shopping list for you. I tell you how to make things gluten-free, vegetarian or vegan if that's what you want, and provide everything you need for a week of delicious dinners. So if you're interested in that, then you can find that on my Substack as well. But for now, back to my gochujang noodles. Okay, so the noodles are very nearly cooked. Not quite, but very, very nearly. Everything is looking saucy and delicious. Look how rich that sauce looks. The last things we're gonna do are add in some cream and a little grating of Parmesan. You don't need loads, it just adds richness and a little bit of a cheesy flavor. You'd usually find it in a pasta alla vodka, so we're just adding it here as well. And then we're popping it back on the heat for a couple of minutes to let that all melt. And then we're gonna serve up with fresh chives and chili flakes. Okay, time to serve up. So this is my spicy vodka gochujang noodles done. All I did to finish it off was top with some chili flakes and fresh chives. You could use spring onion if you wanted instead of the chives, but I think a chive is just really chic. One of the exams I actually had to do at culinary school was chopping chives, and I passed with flying colours, thank you very much. So, and that is it. We are done. I'm gonna give it a try, but as I say, make sure you are following along for more one pot, one portion recipes. Gosh, I can't even tell you how delicious this is. It is really not very elegant to eat. That's why you want to make it when you're by yourself. But it is seriously, seriously delicious. Ripe strawberries, ripe. Do you know what that's from? Never before has a boy wanted more. Oh, I'm starting. I've not introduced myself. Hi. This has not gone well. Oh, the onion's getting me. I can feel it in my eyes. I'm not gonna cry on the internet. I just love nature. Whoa.